Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics for tonight's gold and silver update. It's kind of like the news. Maybe some of you guys used to watch the 10 o'clock news. My dad was a big fan, except we actually give you real information about what is happening and some of the always fascinating developments that go on in our financial world. We're going to mix in some Fed jokes tonight, too. So do not worry about that. Um, and real quick, before I get started, I would never be as audacious or vile to say you should or have to do anything. But if you do want to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, well, that way you will be notified when Jim Willie's new interview is released. Because good news, I'm recording today on Wednesday afternoon, and the great Dr. Jim Willie is calling in 10 a.m. tomorrow. So I'm sure it'll go for a while. We should have parts 1 and 2 Thursday and Friday night. We're going to make a set time soon as well for these premieres that we've been doing. Maybe 9 Eastern. We'll see. Anyway, with all that said, now that you've hit the subscribe and notification bells, let's dig into the action, because you can see the first one here. This isn't actually the link. This is a screenshot of what my email looked like. Excuse me. I had to giggle a little bit when I'm looking on my phone and I see Fed vows aggressive action to aid the economy. Federal Reserve said the U.S. economy has deteriorated due to the coronavirus. Pledged to take aggressive action to support an eventual recovery, which, I mean, what is aggressive action? What do you consider? What fits that definition when the Fed is already doing unlimited quantitative easing? You can go back to yesterday's video. I rounded up the latest stories I found of just chunks of hundreds of billions rather, that are flying out the door. Again, I would assert that we probably don't even have a fraction of an idea of how much money is actually going where yet. I mean, just the way this is phrased, vows aggressive action, as if they're going to blow away what they've already done. But fortunately, you don't have to take my word for it, or really any of this stuff, which is part of what I love so much about the metals. Again, I will be the first to admit I think silver is going to go up a lot. I also do have a relationship with a bullion dealer. I've never, by any means, wanted to be anything but transparent. So take that as what you will. But what I just do is introduce things such as this article where Fed's Powell says more spending will be needed from Congress. Fed warns that the public health crisis will weigh heavily on economic activity. Excuse me. Not corona, though, just a little cough today. But here you see Chairman Jerome Powell delivered an uncharacteristically blunt call on Wednesday for Congress and the White House to spend more money to prevent economic damage. Well, it's interesting. I love this whole cat and mouse game of maintaining the independence between the Fed, Congress, and the White House. Um, for all intents and purposes, I don't really get why it matters in the end. They all want to do the same thing, which is print, borrow, spend more money, which is what ultimately always happens. They pretend that, we don't want anyone stiff arming. Yet here it is that Jerome Powell kind of getting Trump back, because Trump has been, called the Federal Reserve last year. He said they were enemy number one, along with Chinese President Xi Jinping. And now Federal Reserve Jerome Chairman is saying the same about Congress and the White House. Also, a little contradictory, because for years, Congress or reporters have asked the Fed if they thought it was a problem with the borrowing, and usually the Fed and the debt loads that the government's racking up. And usually the Fed's like, well, it's not our department. We're going to maintain independence. And yet here, 2.6 trillion, and Mr. Powell lauded those efforts as appropriate. This could just be me. You can feel free to discount this one. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but as the years go on, which just as reference was 11 years on Wall Street, and then now 8 years since then, really digging into gold and silver and geopolitics. I wonder how much of this is all scripted. Maybe Pelosi's back there sewing the costumes. I mean, it seems like Broadway theater. Again, I have a hard time getting past that movie Contagion from 2011 and how the coronavirus seems like we're reading from that script. The Fed is hunkering down for a long fight. And I'll also mention they want Congress and the White House to spend more. Where is that going to be funded? My guess is that if they actually tried to finance that in the international debt markets, I wonder if they could. But again, who's going to buy it, the guy who's asking them to print it. And, well, that's nice to see they have a MacBook Air. I got the same computer too. So anyway, there's with the Fed. But why do we talk so much about gold and silver here? I know I say we a lot, me and all the people involved, the audience. And because, as you see, the counter effects, well, this is slightly different than the one I looked for before. But I got a headline today of Alistair McLeod talking about a short squeeze from GATA. So as you can see here, let's see if he actually talks about Scotia Makata, who had been rumored to leave the metals business for a couple of years. And he does use that same metaphor that I use, that it seems like the collapse of the London gold pool again. And if I actually go back to the GATA mailing that maybe some of you get, hopefully you should get. GATA is really a great resource. Short squeeze is ending gold suppression by derivatives, according to Alistair McLeod. So, yes, consequences for liquidity in gold and silver derivative contracts are dire. That means, and here we go, the ferocity of the short squeeze. For the gold deniers, it could not come at a worse time. With all traders trying to close their shorts at the same time, you'll understand the ferocity of the short squeeze. Looks to me as if it has just started. So you can find this one on King World News. Looks like that went up today. Again, I mean, you can factor in everyone's opinion. I just keep pointing these out. I'm just saying that a lot of people who have a lot of experience in the gold market are close to a lot of these situations. The exchanges continue to hear London Gold Pool Part 2, short squeeze. I've not seen the smoking gun hammer that it's happening now, but certainly, and I wonder if we'll get that. I hope we do. I look for it. I don't know if that will play out like that, but certainly the signs are there. So again, factor that in as you will. But there's Alistair McLeod saying it, and we will continue on. So here, world's oldest gold trader is closing. That is, again, talking about Scotia Makata, that I guess, at least from what I remember of Ted Butler, was often phrasing that as the second largest short. I guess he's able to isolate out JP Morgan, especially from the Bear Stearns JP Morgan takeover deal. There was a memo that referenced certain things from the CFTC that allowed Ted to isolate their name out. I've heard unofficially Scotia Makata was number 2 on that. Here we see Russian central bank sees no need to restart buying gold. I'm not quite sure that I understand that. And I wonder if that's actually what's happening or if that's Russia's central bank saying that and it's not happening. Geez, I would you would think that Russia would be buying a lot of gold right now, especially as they've been a large gold purchaser. But anyway, I'm just passing along the headlines so you can see it. Again, to be clear, my goal isn't to try and convince you or anyone that gold is going up, down, or sideways, but rather just provide as much information as possible that's of use. A couple of last quick stories before we have an update from ValOre Metals. Jim Paterson, who was on the show recently, going to be joining us for a few minutes at the end. Here you see the U.S. economy shrank at 4.8% pace in the first quarter. Again, this is obviously coming from the BLS numbers that are sometimes referred to as the BS numbers. I can't even imagine what if you were really accurately measuring any sort of economic growth here, what that would look like, but we'll see. And certainly, again, I just want to be clear, I'm not trying to say this callously, especially to any of the folks that are out there, and I know it's not the easiest of times. So my prayers do go out that everyone is finding their new role in the economy if you are changing. I think that's one of the positives that comes from this is that sometimes life changes and we're sent to do different things. And again, I hope that's a peaceful journey for the people who are out there. And now with that said, we are going to have a quick update from Jim Paterson, who has some news to share. So here we go. All right, so I am here with Jim Paterson of Valor Metals. Jim was on the show a couple weeks ago talking about some black swan trading. And Jim, I hear you and the company, you guys have some news tonight, and perhaps you just walk us through what's going on.
Sure, Chris, thanks for having me back. The last time we were talking about the markets, and I was slightly evasive about our drill program this year. We announced it though on Monday. We announced that we had arranged financing so that phase one of a two-phase program was fully funded. And so we just wanted to come back and share that with you because we like to be clear about what we're doing, and now we are. So I'll just jump right in and let's see if I can do this. Tell me what you see, my friend.
I see a brilliant mining executive, because anyone who can dig for metals and figure out how to do a Zoom screen share, that's some good leadership we're under. So, yep, we see that. And you secured a $1.2 million financing. And yeah, especially for people who may be a little new to how some of these financings work, if you could just walk through, because I know that is quite a process.
In this particular case, one of the things that was happening with the company is that we were just taking our time to make sure we got all of our permitting in order down in Brazil for our drill program at our Pedra Branca project. And it was taking a little longer than we'd hoped. And I didn't want to raise money for that with an equity financing without clarity on my use of proceeds. So I was kind of cart before the horse and chicken before the egg type thing. So now that we have the clarity on the permitting and real clarity on the program, I'd like to start the program. And what we did here is we just organized a bridge loan. And the bridge loan is one where there's no equity kicker and there's no security, but it just allows the company to advance the project and start drilling. And now we'll have inertia, news flow, and we can go out to the market and do an equity financing. But this is actually a bridge loan, and I provided this to the company so that we didn't have to finance at a cheap price. I'm a big shareholder, and I didn't want to dilute down at lower prices. So that's what we organized. It's not really a standard financing, to be honest. That this, you know, there aren't warrant kickers or anything weird or funky with this. I just am a big shareholder, and I didn't want to do a big financing at a cheap price if I could avoid it. Yep. So that's the purpose. Anyway, so we're funded to do to start the program. Now let's see if we can make the rest of this work. So the Pedra Branca project is in northeastern Brazil. So right in the middle here, you can see the map of South America, the country of Brazil, Ceará state, that's where the star is, that's where the project is. And the big city there is called Fortaleza. It's about 3 million people. There's a bunch of skyscrapers you see on a beautiful beach. That's the city of Fortaleza. There's an international airport. There's a deep water port, a commercial port. And there are big federal highways that lead from Fortaleza right past the project, which is shown right here in these white outlines. That's the property area. It takes about 4.5 hours to drive there. But you know, if you think about not having to make the investment in a project for a port or roads or airports, the access is excellent. There's great population there. This is a bit remote out of town, but the access is excellent. And right here is the town of Capitão Mor, where we base our operations.
Yep.
And you know, one of the things that we like to point out to people that might be surprising to people to see, that's what the property looks like. It isn't rainforest, it isn't the Amazon. It looks a little like Texas, actually.
Yep.
And ranch land, great access, great mineral tenure, and you know, we have a large land package there that is an excellent place, and there isn't an issue with the rainforest, which people a lot of times associate with Brazil. We're dealing with a big data package. Over $35 million was spent by previous operators, and we're using that. We have a resource there. So you talk about, do you have metal in the ground or not? We have a 43101 resource of over 1 million ounces of palladium platinum. It's about 60-40 palladium to platinum. A little bit of gold, so we call it a 2PGE or platinum group element. Palladium and platinum and a little bit of gold. And what we like about it is this district scale potential. So we talked a little bit about the financing, but the program is pretty clear cut. We're looking at drilling a little under 6,000 meters in total. The first phase is about 2,800 meters. And we have a real clear focus there, what we want to do. We want to focus in on, if you go to our website, you can see this. And I always tell people, when you look at a map, look at the legend, read the legend to understand what the heck you're looking at. So that's the first thing you do. Some people go, oh my God, it's a mess. But it's all explained. So top left, these little red stars represent where the zones that make up the 43-1 resources. So you can look on the map and see where they are. You can see the yellow dots. That's where we'll be drilling for the phase 1. The blue dots is phase 2. And these white dots with the black dot in the middle represent where historic drilling is. And for the most part, about 80% of the holes that were drilled in the property were into areas that now form the 43101 resource. So pretty good hit ratio. And then you can see right here, these are paved roads through the property and secondary roads right up to the areas where we'll be drilling. So the access is pretty good. And then these are the claims. So on our website, you can see some videos by some of the guys that work with us, Colin Smith and Alex Heath. They are talking about Mendez North, phase 2, Santo Amaro, and then we really focus in here on phase 1. So we'll be focusing on resource expansion, so trying to expand the areas which are already known resources in our 4301 resource. We'll be drilling targets that have already been drilled by previous operators, where they had drill intervals that had high grade mineralization, and they just didn't have enough the drilling density to put it in the resource category. So we'll be drilling those. And then we'll also be drilling targets that are totally greenfields, or, you know, we're shooting for these new discoveries. So we have a great data set, and there's some targets that haven't been drilled. So we've really moved them up the food chain, and the drilling is where we'll add a lot of value, we believe. So that's the first phase of the program, is fully funded, and a mixture between adding value to certain areas where the asset has been drilled, and then in other areas we're trying to kind of bring new ones completely on that aren't part of the resource and add them to the resource inventory, and then finally make discoveries which we think will drive valuations of the stock. So that's pretty much it. We have valoremetals.com. You can go look at the website if you want to get updated. The news release is pretty detailed, and our information is all over there if you want to call and talk to us.
Well, I appreciate that, Jim. Thanks for the update. Congratulations. I know there's a lot that goes into that. So appreciate you passing that along, and we will look forward to following how it goes. All right. So thank you, Jim, for that update. As we wrap up here, just a couple look at the prices. We see gold staying above $1,700. Looks interesting for some of you technical charters out there, which by all means I don't claim to be, but we know a lot happens around the handle, as they call it, or those big round numbers, the 1700 mark. You're interesting to see gold sold off a couple times, kept bouncing off that line. Whether that means anything in the grander scheme, we shall see. But just interesting to see silver on a Wednesday afternoon is loading quite slowly, but the price is 1530-ish, shall we call it. Quite a spike up there late in the afternoon. But silver closing, let's call it 1527. Quick look at the mining stocks here and my list of silver miners that I like to follow. Sorry, internet is a little slow here today. So much for that 5G nonsense. I hope I'm not getting microwaved while I'm doing this. But you can see a good day for a lot of the silver miners. First Majestic up 6%, over 6% on the day. Yeah, it looks like Fortuna there up over 10%. So, again, we're seeing some of the silver stocks even rebound as the silver price rebounds. Maybe one parting thought. I continue to wonder if there's going to be some point where finally it becomes the momentum chasers pile in and everyone's looking for some of these stocks at the same time. Who knows? Maybe it will be once silver finally breaks through 20. If we have something similar here where, this 1700 level and it bounces off that, if silver gets through 20, I think there's going to be some point where people pile in because everyone else is piling in, to the degree that fund managers are marked against each other. And sometimes you hear people say, well, nobody else is buying silver stocks yet, so I don't want to buy it. And then I get fired because it went bad. And what often happens is that, all right, well, all of my peers are buying the silver stocks. So silver turns around and, well, hey, everybody was doing the same thing. We couldn't have known. Now, is that the ideal way to invest? Perhaps not. Is that how a lot of these things end up playing out? I would say yes. So in either case, it will be fun to follow along. And certainly, I'm getting excited. I love all the guests that are kind enough to give some time and join me on the show. Although Jim is one of my favorites. Man, the guy could talk about cooking eggs, and it would probably make me smile. So, again, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and stay tuned because tomorrow, Jim Willie Part 1 will be coming your way. It's going to be a blast. Thanks, as always, for watching. I really do appreciate your support and all the kind words that you guys send in. So grateful that this content is helping. And if you want to know more about what's going on in these financial markets, well, just stay tuned because, again, I have you covered.